I was pitching to an investor and I did my pitch about how great the product was and the business plan. And his response was, I love your product and your business plan. I have no questions about that. I have one question for you, and how you answer it will determine if I invest.
Hi, Kelly here. Today I speak with Lara Hodgson. She's the CEO of ROXWrite, which is a fintech startup out of Atlanta. Lara is a serial entrepreneur. She is a seasoned startup and scaling CEO. And today, one of the things we talk about is the challenges that come with hiring a friend. And what do you do when that person is no longer a fit for the role or the company or the stage of the company? So we talk a lot about interpersonal dynamics here and what do you do about that as a leader? Lara has a wealth of knowledge to share. She's personable, she's warm. Enjoy the episode, and thanks for listening. Hi, welcome back to Life from Within. I'm Kelly Dwyer, your host. Today we have Lara Hodgson. Lara is currently the CEO of ROXWrite. It's an innovative AI-enabled underwriting platform to enable lenders and businesses to assess the risk of their customers. Lara's a rocket scientist, a contrarian, and a serial entrepreneur with an engineering mind and a liberal arts personality. She has founded 3 companies over the course of her career, and before starting her first company, she worked at startups such as Dunk.net, which was founded with Shaquille O'Neal, and at IXL, where she learned that she thrived in the ambiguity of startups. Lara is the co-author of the best-selling book, Level Up, Rise Above the Hidden Forces Holding Your Business Back, and has served as an entrepreneur in residence at Harvard Business School. She serves as a trustee at Georgia Tech, where she studied aerospace engineering and was a member of the varsity track and field team. Welcome, Lara.
Thanks.
So happy to have you here today. Okay, you are a dynamic person. And there is so much in your bio that I could just follow up on here and ask questions about. And one is, okay, tell me a little bit more about contrarian. I happen to be a rule follower, as much to my own dismay. So what's it like living life as a contrarian?
Someone asked me the other day, why are you like you are? And I was like, well, gosh, that's a loaded question. How do I know that? I think it was growing up as one of the few women in engineering at the time and learning how to look at something and immediately pick it apart. And I have this kind of systematic way of thinking. So when someone tells me that's the way it's always done, my immediate thought is, well, what if it wasn't? What if we did it differently? And in some ways that probably drives people crazy, but it's also such an interesting way to allow people to question the way things are done, but in a way that's not judgmental, not threatening, because it really is just, let's try it on for size.
Tell me about what it means to have an engineering mind and a liberal arts personality.
When I was a student at Georgia Tech in aerospace engineering, one of my professors said that to me. He said, you have an engineering mind and a liberal arts personality. And when you tell an 18-year-old that, it didn't sound good. It sounded somewhat schizophrenic and maybe required medication. But over the course of my career, what I've realized is it was actually a compliment, because my engineering mind is very analytical. So I can look at something, apply critical thinking, dissect it, look at spreadsheets, etc. But my personality, what gives me joy, what drives energy, is interacting with people and communicating, either written or spoken. And so I think in the end, it's actually a positive, because I had someone one time say, you don't look like an aerospace engineer. Not sure what they're supposed to look like, but I think what she meant is that I could explain complicated things in a very simple way. And I think that's a huge advantage, both in business and in life.
Yeah, I imagine it's been a huge advantage to you in starting all of these companies. You went from aerospace engineering into business into fintech. So now you're in fintech, right?
Right.
So you and I met after you had entered into the fintech space and have this liberal arts personality. You were the CEO of the company. And what I noticed about you is how compassionate you are. And like you said, to your point, you're very people oriented.
Yeah.
How has that created challenges for you as the CEO?
I always say your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. And I think that's true of us as people. I think it's true of any organization, any system. And being compassionate and often putting others first and being very empathetic, on one hand, has been an incredible positive because it's enabled me to attract great talent to my teams. It's enabled me to build a work culture that people enjoy working with me and in the company. But it's also a challenge sometimes because when you have to make hard decisions about adding someone to your team, or even more importantly, asking someone to leave your team, that is very hard for me. It's not natural, and I lose sleep over it every night.
So, given that it's a challenge for you and it has an impact on the rest of the team with the person who stays and they're not a
Yeah.
fit anymore, maybe they were a fit at one point and they're not anymore, or for whatever reason, performance has changed, right? Or the
Yeah.
company requires a different skill set. What's been your journey around that?
In each of my startups, I've learned something different. So if I go back to Nourish, when we founded the spill-proof bottled water company, Stacy and I founded the company. Our first hires were a dream team. And what I mean by that is we looked at ourselves and said, okay, I have a business background from Harvard. She has a law degree from Yale. But what don't we have? Well, we need a finance person. We need a marketing person. We need a product person. And so we brought in three women who, on paper, had all the skill sets that we didn't have. And we thought, oh, this is going to be perfect, until it wasn't. And what we quickly realized, and what I learned from that, is you don't hire skill sets, you hire mindsets. Skill sets can be taught. I mean, unless I'm trying to teach you brain surgery or rocket science, which I'm not, there's very little I can't teach you how to do. But what I can't teach you how to do is how to think. I can't teach you how to react under stress. I can't teach you work ethic, things like that. And what we quickly found with these three women who, on paper, if you put our resumes together, you would say, wow, we didn't all have the same drive. We didn't all have the same sort of life stage that drove our priorities in terms of what was important to us. And so very quickly, we started to have a great amount of friction. And at one point, I can remember Stacy saying, gosh, I hate to let this person go. They work so hard. And I remember us having this conversation about, we very much have a culture today about, as long as I'm putting effort in, I should be allowed to stay. But unless you're a lawyer or a consultant that charges by the hour and your unit of value is time, the fact that you work hard on something, if there's no results, it doesn't really matter that you worked hard, right? That just means you were busy and spent a lot of time doing something. So I think my first learning was to shift how I hired and focus more on mindsets and less on skill sets. Fast forward to Now Account. And our next company, I applied those learnings and I focused more on mindsets versus skill sets. And I tried to take more time hiring, because I think a lot of people hire fast and fire slow. And that's exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So I spent a lot of time making sure the person that joined the team was perfect. But then I had a different challenge. Again, I'm very good at attracting talent because of my empathy. So I had all of these highly skilled friends of mine that wanted to join the team, and they were friends. So I knew their mindset. I'm like, oh, I know this person. I know how they tackle problems. I know they're calm under pressure. But as you mentioned earlier, sometimes a person is right for some period of time, and then they're not right anymore because the company or the team has grown in a direction that no longer optimizes their skill set. And so I knew I needed to let this person go, but they were a friend of mine. And I think the other challenge that entrepreneurs have, more so than just a hired CEO, is cynics don't start companies, optimists do. And as an optimist, right? It's true,
You are
right?
a
I mean,
level 10 optimist.
right, right. I mean, cynics don't start businesses because they see all the problems before
Yeah.
they start. But as an optimist, not only do I see the vision of the company,
Yeah.
but I see the potential in all the people I hire. So when someone is not performing, or even worse, they're performing, but their culture is a friction. That's the
Yes.
hardest. When
Yeah.
they're actually doing a good job,
Yes.
but they're just not a fit, it's causing friction. And even though they're doing their job, the company is not reaching its goals. But as an optimist, I'm like, oh, they can get there. I know they
Yeah.
can. I see it. I see the potential. And
Right.
that's the hardest because sometimes I see potential that either might not be there or it's there, but the time to get to it is way outside my horizon. And
Right.
so I rationalize keeping them. Like, oh, let's
Yes.
just give them another couple of months because I
Yeah.
think they'll get there. What I learned there is I was so focused on the person that I needed to exit and giving them time to reach their potential that I didn't realize keeping them was a disservice to the rest of my team. And had I reframed that, I would have done it quicker.
You say it's a disservice to the rest of the team. In what way? Like, what were some of the specific impacts that you saw?
This one particular case that I'm thinking about, we were a relatively small team overall, 30 to 50 people at any given time. But our leadership team was obviously even smaller with 6 to 8 people. And so if one person on that leadership team was causing other people to not reach their potential, my head of operations, my head of marketing, my head of finance, they had things they needed to accomplish. And yet this other person was becoming an obstacle in many ways, even though they were doing their functional job well, they were causing the other parts of the team to not be optimized. And,
Mhm.
and in some cases, it was a personality issue. And that's the hardest, right? When you're like, oh, but technically they're very good.
Yeah.
And seen this before with like a head of sales. In this case, that was not my issue, but you might have a head of sales that is knocking it out of the park on production. But if they're causing so much friction with the rest of the team that the production is causing your engine to not be efficient, you kind of have to cut off the sales performance to get a better person. You can't underestimate the importance of the culture in the company. All too often we say, well, this function's performing, this function's performing. But if the company is a system, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter if one piece is performing if the overall system isn't performing,
Right.
right? I mean, you could look at your car and say, hey, the automatic windows work great. But if it doesn't move forward, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right. Two things came up for me as I was listening to this story. I used to do this with boyfriends a lot. I'd see the potential, their potential, the potential for the relationship, and
Right.
just so optimistic about that and not really tuning into the reality
Yeah.
of what was
Yeah.
really going on, right? So that was thing one. And the second thing is I work with a lot of leaders. I coach a lot of leaders who are like, let's say, newer to an executive
Yeah.
team or newer into that C-suite or as an executive. And when you become an organizational leader, so you're no longer just a functional leader. You are
Right.
still a functional leader, but you're no longer just a functional leader. You're an organizational leader. And the transition that people have to make is they have to understand that their interpersonal skills have just become exponentially more important because that's what they need to influence their peers, influence across, and influence up. When the interpersonal skills aren't there, it just creates friction.
Yeah.
And I love your perspective that it actually impacts the other people on the team from realizing their potential, which
Right.
impacts the overall system.
Point about people's ability to manage up, manage down versus manage side to side. I think we focus a lot on the up and down, right? This person is performing and they're working with their superior well, or they're a manager and they're managing their team well. But in my experience, the side to side management may in many ways be more critical to performance.
Well, especially when you're on the senior leadership team.
Right.
Because that team has to operate, they have to move forward as
Right.
one, right?
Right.
And you have to learn how to function together as a team.
Yeah. I heard an interesting thing yesterday from another founder that had scaled from a startup up to unicorn status. And he made an interesting sort of segmentation. He said there's kind of 3 types of workers. There's those that if you give them a task to do, they'll do an incredible job at executing on it. There's another type that if you tell them there's a need or a task to be done, you don't actually have to tell them how to do it. They're going to get the task, figure out how to solve it, and deliver it. And then there's the third type that you don't even need to tell them there's a task that needs to be done. They're going to find an opportunity, define a solution, solve it, and you don't possibly even know there was a problem yet, or you don't even know there was a need to be done. And he made a comment that as your company scales, the mix of those three has to change.
Interesting.
And I thought that was so interesting, but he's right, because in the early stages, when you're a very small team, you need a lot of the latter, which are people who are just going to see an opportunity or an issue that needs to be solved, solve it. And the senior person hopefully never even knows that it was there.
Hmm.
You see a task that needs to be done, you define how to solve it, and you do it. But as you get larger and you get more structure in place, you progressively need more of the first and the second. People who a task is defined, they take the initiative on how to solve it and they solve it, or you tell them what needs to be done and you tell them how you want it done and they solve it well. And as you get larger, if you have too many of the original ones that are just looking for things to solve, you lose focus because everybody's
Yes.
sort of off defining their own opportunities. And I just heard it yesterday and it's like still going through my mind, but it's an interesting way of sort of mapping your team in the early days. And then as you scale through these stages, making sure that your mix shift from sort of envisioning to executing.
Yeah. That's interesting. I have a little bit of a different perspective on that. There was
Yeah.
a client that I worked with for a long time, and the CEO was frustrated. So the third type of person that you describe is
Mhm.
someone that has a lot of internal agency. They
Right.
experience a lot of internal agency, so they have the confidence to be
Yes.
proactive and take initiative, and they don't even stop to think, do I need to ask anyone permission? Right? They just do.
Right.
And so this particular company, somewhere between 1 and 200 people big,
Mhm.
and they'd been around for a while, and they were experiencing some market headwinds. Plus, they have a pretty complex business model, I would say. They're a
Okay.
platform, so
Yeah.
they've got multiple different things that are going on. And the CEO became consistently frustrated because he didn't feel that people were demonstrating enough agency. So there were too many of the ones and twos and not
Right.
enough of the threes from his
And
perspective to
sure.
help solve for the acute challenges that the
Right.
company was facing at that moment in time. So that's
Interesting.
interesting,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do
Yeah.
you remain flexible enough?
Right. And what's the ideal ratio of those at different stages? And does it matter where they are? Does it matter where in the organizational chart the ones, twos, and threes are? I mean, logically, you would hope to have more of the threes in a senior role and more of the ones that are the doers in the more junior roles. But it probably depends on the function too,
Yeah.
right? What your mix is.
Yeah.
But I'd never thought about that segmentation. Aligns with my thoughts around mindsets versus skill sets, right? Because it kind of defines your mindset, which is aligned with your agency.
Yeah. The next time you're faced with misalignment in
Yeah,
person and role, what do you think you're going to do differently? How are you going to use the awareness that you have about yourself
right.
to act differently?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one is I need to incorporate that more upfront in my hiring and screening because a lot of times when you interview people and you hire them, you immediately see the potential. But I probably need to put more stress on people who have more proven exercise and less potential. Like the potential is great because you know they can grow into other roles, but I may need to weight that differently and sometimes I get overly excited about the potential that I see as opposed to focusing on, but have they done it before? A little bit of the challenge with that is when you're in an innovative setting, you don't necessarily just want to hire people that have done something before because you want them to think different. So you take a little bit of a risk hiring somebody that's maybe outside of the lines of, hey, I've done this exact job before. I lean towards innovative thinkers and people who can think differently about a solution, but I probably need to put a little more weight on proven activity or proven behavior so that I'm not relying so much on potential. The second thing, and I've done this, and I think the first time I did it, it was a little risky, but as much as I work on it, this is always going to be one of my weaknesses. And again, it's also my strength. So if it stops being a complete weakness, it also could stop being my strength. So I can't change who I am. I
Right.
can work on how I deliver that. And so one of the things I actually have done with my team is be very transparent and tell my leadership team, this is my weakness. I'm going to tell you right now that if I lose sleep at night, it's not about a complex financial deal. It's not about a big client issue that's going on. I have every confidence that I can solve those. But when I see the interpersonal conflict, that keeps me up at night. And it keeps me up at night because I don't always know how to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I lose empathy for it because I'm like, for the love, just get over it and get your job done. You don't have to love each other to get your
Right.
job done.
Right.
But you kind of do sometimes. Like, you do have to have that cultural alignment to get your job done. Part of it is being honest with myself and then incorporating that into my hiring. And part of it is also being honest with my team so that I make sure I have someone on the team in a key role that's their strength.
Yes.
Right. And
Oh,
so
yes.
certainly, like, if I'm hiring a head of HR or head of people, I know that's my weakness. So I need someone else for whom that is their strength so that they can hit me on the side and be like, you're doing it again. Stop. Because
Yeah.
I will keep doing it.
Oh, it's so important for people to be in roles where they get to lean into their strengths.
Right.
And it feels good. You know,
Yes.
not only are the results better, but it feels better. People feel on purpose.
Right.
They feel like they're self-realizing in a way,
And
right?
it feels good to know somebody has your back. Like, as good as it is to say, I get to lean into my strengths, the security of knowing that someone else on the team has the strength I don't, and they have, as you mentioned earlier, they have the agency to use it, then I know that if I've got a blind spot and I'm missing it, that they are going to raise the red flag and say, Lara, you're missing it.
Yeah,
Right. So
right.
I have to also give them the agency to lean in on their strength so that their strength can be my backup.
Yeah, well, yes, and people have to feel comfortable enough with conflict. I feel
Right.
like that's another area where if teams aren't willing to have the hard debates, to have the hard conversations, to have the conflict, then you're never going to get to the other side of it because then
Right.
people aren't going to feel comfortable challenging you because they're afraid of conflict.
Right. This comfort with conflict is a little bit of a pandemic that we're going through. It's becoming more prevalent that people avoid conflict or they avoid being uncomfortable. It's a little bit of a trend with young people that have been prevented from being uncomfortable because of their ever so loving parents, that when they get into college and ultimately into a work environment, they're not comfortable being uncomfortable because they haven't been able to practice it before. One of the things I've found is with all this technology that allows us to have conversations where we're not face to face, which create conflict in and of themselves, and then this like avoidance of conflict in general. I mean, that's an area that we as leaders in business have to think about. How do we develop that? Because I'm older and I probably developed my comfort with being uncomfortable as a kid because I was uncomfortable a lot.
Right.
But if I look at my son, who's 20, and I were to compare that, he was probably uncomfortable a lot less than I was because we afforded him comfort. And his first boss might not thank me for that. But I do think that as leaders, we're going to see a generation of people coming in who have not practiced conflict well. And we're going to have to figure out how to develop that as a skill.
That's interesting and concerning. And
Sorry.
That's right. As an aside, your son has also played competitive sports,
True.
and I know that he's had a lot of physical discomfort along
That's
the
right.
way, right? So there's been some level of developing tolerance for
Right.
that. I say this a lot to myself, because I am someone who is working on becoming more comfortable with conflict, but also to a lot of my clients. It's sort of in the same vein as culture. Like, you have a
Right.
company culture. You can choose to be intentional and cultivate it in a way that you think is positive, or you
Yeah.
can just let it be what it is. The fact remains you have a company culture just
That's
because
right.
you have people together working together. So conflict is sort of the result or the outcome of a misalignment. So when there's a misalignment that exists, It exists, whether you want to acknowledge it, whether someone feels it acutely externally, or
Right.
whether someone is feeling it internally and is withholding their feelings about it.
Right.
It still exists. And so you have to decide who you want to be in that moment. Do you want to be
Right.
the person that tolerates walking around, feeling the misalignment, but being too afraid to say something about it because of
Yeah.
like someone might get angry? Or do you want to be the
Right.
person that calls it out and, hey, let's just address it?
Well, and it's interesting. I saw a quote one time and I use it in a lot of my presentations, and I'm going to get it 80% right from memory. It says, the culture of any organization is defined by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
love that, right? Because to your point, I know leaders who are very good at defining the culture they want and intentionally building it.
Mhm.
And any behavior that doesn't align with that, it gets cut out like a cancer right away. But then there's other people who, to your point, just sort of allow it to grow and let's see what kind of flower we get. And usually that is defined by whatever behavior you allow to occur in your company. I think that goes back to my learning that by not letting this person go sooner, it was hurting the rest of the team because I was redefining the behavior I was willing to tolerate.
It changes the culture. It also changes the level of respect that people
Right.
have for you, which diminishes your influence.
Right.
And it certainly diminishes that person's influence because the other people are clearly seeing that
Right.
there's something not copacetic here.
But one of the things you hear a lot in business is when people make hard decisions, they'll often say it's not personal. And the empathetic side to me's response is everything is personal. Business is personal because it involves people. And by definition, anything that's driven by people has the personal element to it. But I think what they're really trying to say is while it is in fact personal, like it's not true that it's not personal, but I have to put the collective person, which is the organization, ahead of any one person's interest. And by definition, a company is a collection of people
Yeah.
and it owes something to its stakeholders, whether those stakeholders are clients or customers or investors or lenders, et cetera. So it is personal, but the collective person, which is the organization, has to take priority over the interest of any one person.
Absolutely. I don't know who it was, but I read in some book somewhere. My job as a coach, when I'm hired by a company, let's say I'm working with a team or I'm working with a leader, my allegiance is to the company being able to deliver on its
Right.
mission. And so that's what it is about. To your point
Right.
there, like it's about the company being able to be healthy enough to deliver on its mission and so that its beneficiaries can receive the benefits that it promises.
Interesting because you made the comment, my son played sports, so he's had some discomfort. It's really interesting when you look at the generation that kind of grew up with digital social media being kind of native, because words matter and there's words that we use in our life that actually mean more than we think. And one of those words in my son's generation is the word like, because they've grown up with their
Huh.
worth being defined by likes, right? Likes on social media platforms, et cetera. And so it's interesting because when I think back to my life as an athlete growing up, I had coaches that screamed at me in my face and they yelled at me. And under today's definition of like, you would not have thought that they liked me, right?
Right.
But the interesting thing is they were doing what you just said. They were putting the importance of the team performing over any affinity they had for me as a person, which they should have because their job as coach is for the team to win. And never in all my years of competing from the time I was little to Division I sports in college, never once did it enter my mind as either a pride or a concern, did my coach like me?
Right.
Like that wasn't even a thing.
Right.
Like I wanted them to respect me. I
Yeah.
wanted them to see the potential of my performance on the team. But when I look at my son's cohort, it is a very common phrase to say, I think the coach likes me, or I don't think the coach likes me. He's not playing me enough. And then parents adopt that, like, oh,
Yeah.
this coach is not playing my child. They must not like him. And I'm like, how did the word like
Right.
enter equation
Yeah.
because the coach's job isn't to like or not like you. And they might like you a lot and still not play you.
Right. Because you might not deliver.
Because you're not delivering and you're
Right.
not the most skilled person on the team at that time. Even though I played sports for a very long time and my son continues to play sports in college, I think his experience is very different because if the coach that he experiences were to rip them the way mine did, I think you'd end up with a lot of kids very upset that their coach doesn't like them.
Oh, and then the parents
And then the parents
calling.
would like threaten to sue, right?
Right. You had said earlier in our conversation, it's kind of important for a team to love each other. You use the word love. I don't think you really meant like love,
Right.
love. My perspective on that is it's important for teams to have enough respect for each other to be able to work well enough together, right? I don't think we need to aim for perfection. We just need to aim for enough understanding of one another and enough respect for one another that we can work effectively together.
It needs to be enough respect that you trust that the other party has good intentions.
Yes.
Because when you don't completely respect the other person's either qualifications, ability, intent, bias, what have
Right.
you, what goes on in your mind is that they're not working towards the same goal you are. And therefore, you need to either try to dominate them or ignore them or push them out. Whereas if you respect that your counterparts are working just as hard towards the same goal you have and have the skills to excel at it, then you usually don't have a ton of friction. It's when one side either doesn't think the other side has it, or one side lacks the confidence and thinks their peers don't trust them.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes it's an internal voice issue. This person doesn't respect me. And of course, that person might be oblivious.
It comes back to a willingness to address the conflict.
The conversation, the
Yes.
conflict, right?
Yeah.
I think you're disrespecting me. And the
Yeah.
other person says, I don't even know what you're talking about. I
Right.
think you're great.
Right. Tell us a little bit about ROXWrite, the stage that it's in.
We've built this incredible sort of AI-enabled platform. If you are a lender or a factor, or you're a business that has a new customer and you want to know if they are creditworthy, should you take the risk to do business with them or to lend them money or to buy their invoices, you can log into Rox. And when your customer applies for a facility or sends you a PO or what have you, you can very quickly pull information from them, whether that's their financials, their bank statements, or you can just integrate into third-party data, like pull the Secretary of State filing. Are they a legitimate business? Are they active in that state? You can pull reports on their backgrounds. Do they have a criminal record? Do they have any liens or judgments? And with the touch of a button, you can have all that data come together into a very nice summarized credit memo that says, here are the risks. If you take that client, here are your risks. Here are their strengths. And then you can very quickly decide, do I want to take that company on as a customer or a borrower or a client of my factoring operation? So it's a very quick way to assess risk and then decide if that company is for you. The reason it's important is anyone who's ever had a business knows that you get that customer that doesn't pay you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you deliver
Right.
all the service and then they just don't pay. Or even worse, they're fraudsters and you deliver the good or service and they disappear with the money. This is a very quick way to say, is it worth me expending the time and the resources to deliver a product or give them money? Is it likely that I'm going to get paid back?
The team is pretty small right now or growing.
The team is very small. And this is an interesting experience. I've never had this before because every company I've started on my own. But this business is inside of a venture studio called Rule One Ventures here in Atlanta. It's a fascinating team led by a former Navy SEAL and a former Naval Academy F-18, two like really great leaders. Because I'm part of this venture studio, as I'm growing the company, I don't have to go out and start hiring right away because the studio has a team that I can leverage. So at this stage of the company, the studio has a development team. So as my product evolves and I need to add functionality and service clients, I have a team that I can use, but that same team is also helping other portfolio companies. So it's incredibly cost efficient
Yeah.
because I'm getting fractional time of some of the best talent that I could never afford to hire. Like I couldn't hire that development team to be full time with me because they're all so talented. I wouldn't have the funds for that. So I'm getting really high quality development work at a fraction of the cost. And then the studio also has a marketing team and a finance team and a sales team. And so the businesses like mine that are in the studio start out using all these other resources. And then as you grow and you need more dedicated time, then you can hire your own marketing person or your own development person and still use the other resources in the studio for the areas that you're not ready to hire full time. That's been interesting for me in two ways. One, it has allowed me to accelerate the growth of the company without burning a lot of cash, which is incredible. You get to profitability a lot faster. But I have to say the other thing, which I don't know if this was by design, is it actually makes me a better CEO because it's forcing me not to try to do everything. And again, a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start their business, they have to do everything, right? They wear like 15 different hats. And as the company grows, you take off a hat and give it to somebody else. That's so hard because you've done it yourself and then you're like, oh, I kind of want it done my way. But when you don't give away those hats, you become the limiting factor to your
Yes.
company's growth and success. So by being a part of this studio, it's forcing me sooner rather than later to let someone else take the lead on marketing or someone else take the lead on the product design. And then I become the last voice. Review this and tell us what you think, or tell us what direction you want it to take. So I have to write a brief if I want something new added, and then the team dives in and starts to make it happen. So in a weird way, it's also training me to focus on the tasks that I as a CEO should focus on and let experts do the other parts. And I'll tell you one other thing. It aligns with an experience I had years ago when I was pitching to an investor and I did my pitch about how great the product was and the business plan. And his response was, I love your product and your business plan. I have no questions about that. I have one question for you, and how you answer it will determine if I invest.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope I have the answer, right? But his question was, what is your role as CEO? And thankfully, I had the right answer, but I didn't know what it was. I just answered what I thought. And I said, well, as CEO, my job is to set the vision and make sure that my team is aligned on that vision. My second job is to attract great people, right? So, like, build a team of kick ass talent and culture. And my third job is to marshal resources. That could be raising capital, it could be pulling in strategic partnerships. And the most important part of the answer was that I stopped there because he said most people will list a whole lot of other things. I'm going to be the lead salesperson and I'm going to bring in clients and I'm going to do this. And he's like, the right answer was those three things and nothing else.
And you got the money. Woo!
I got it right. But you know what? Like, I hadn't thought about it after that. I mean, I felt really good that day when I was like, yes, got it right.
Yeah.
But then experiencing the venture studio made me realize that's what he was talking about, was that you're not supposed to try to do all those other things.
So building on that, imagining that the person listening is a CEO, they're a startup CEO, they're an entrepreneur. What's one thing you haven't said today that you'd love for them to remember or take away?
I think the one thing, if I were in my shoes that I've been in over and over and over as a CEO, starting a company or taking an early stage company and trying to grow it, it would be that if you have an average team and an incredible idea slash business plan, you have a very small to average chance of success. But if you have an amazing A plus team and even an average idea or business plan, you have a greater chance of success. So focus on the team.
I love that. You had mentioned earlier in our conversation, it matters what life stage people are in. When
Uh-huh.
you're thinking about pulling a team together, how do you think about
Yeah.
that now?
In that particular situation, when we were building a team and you were thinking about life stage, I think what we missed is that as a startup, we had a lot of ambiguity. Startups have a lot of risk because they could be here today and gone in 2 months.
Yeah.
Nothing is defined. So you have to take the initiative, use your agency, as you said, to find opportunities to grow the company or cut costs or whatever your goals are. In our example, we had a woman who had a very stable, well paying job at a Fortune 500 company. And the idea was that over time, as the company grew, she would transition from sort of part time helping us to full time. But the life stage that she was at, she had just gotten married, they had just bought their first house, wanting to start a family. And when it came down to it, that risk profile was not for her at that stage.
Hmm.
Right? It's not that she wasn't comfortable being in a startup. It's that she was at a stage in her life where stability and base pay and things like that were more important to her than potential ownership of a startup, et cetera. Likewise, I've brought senior people in before who would say to me, I've been in the industry for 30 years and I've got one more thing in me, right?
Yeah.
I've got a 5-year runway and I
Yeah.
want to impart my knowledge on the next generation. And that can be incredibly valuable in a company. But you also have to make sure that your company is at the right stage to use that. So it's important the life stage of the person and whether that aligns with the needs of the company. But it's also important that the company be at the right stage to take that value that's coming in and utilize it. Because let's say you bring someone in who is more in the mindset of I'm going to be the teacher slash coach because I'm going to impart knowledge and then I'm going to go retire and enjoy the beach, which is a wonderful thing that we all strive for, right? So, like, no judgment. But that person's probably not going to be a great doer
Right.
because they're
Right.
kind of done with that. They're
Yeah.
tired. They've
Yeah.
done it a million times.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a young person ready to be receiving that and being the doer, then you're kind of wasting it.
Yes, I love that. And so as a CEO, a young CEO or a new CEO or someone of a younger company is building their team, I'm interpreting what you're saying is that it's important for that person to suss out in the interviewing process, not like invasive questions, are you going to start a
Right.
family, right? But
No.
suss out like what is it that this person wants from the experience if they were to get this job? Like what is it they're looking for from the experience? Because then you can assess if it's a fit. Yeah.
Because there could be another person that's in the exact same, like, just got married, wanting to start a family, who has a different risk profile.
Yes.
Right? Because their family situation might be different or
Right.
what have you. So you're right. It's not a one size fits all. It's more about what is going on in that person's life that's driving their goals for the next X years, which is your time horizon. What is it you want to accomplish in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? And what are your priorities?
Right.
Because if you can articulate that, they might still be a great person for your company in a year. Not now, because that misalignment is going to frustrate them and you. What
Right.
they want out of it is not what you can give right now.
Well, it could be a setup for burnout. Laura, thank you so much for your time. I'm so
So
glad you
fun to
came on
talk
the
to you.
show. Oh, thank you. Okay, and so where can people find you? Where do you want to point them?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so
Yes.
people can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. RoXWrite is www.roxwrite.com. ROXWRITE.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll share all that information in the show
All
notes.
right.
Hi, Kelly here. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone who could benefit from it. I'd love to hear from you. I would love it if you would rate the show, of course. 5 stars. What would make a real difference, though, is if you leave a review sharing what you like about the show and what you want to see in future episodes. I do want to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in. Your time is precious, and I feel a lot of gratitude that you're choosing to share some of it with me. Catch you next time on Life from Within.